Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Geek-Stew, and today, guys, welcome back to an episode of Horror Stew. That is right. Today, guys, we're doing another Horror Stew, and if you've listened to any of the previous videos from Monday or Wednesday, the reason that we are doing a Horror Stew today is because your boy went out and watched the Candyman on Tuesday. That's right. So to kind of give a little backstory on the adventure, if you will, because if you haven't been to the movie theaters in a while, it's sort of an interesting thing. So originally, when movie theaters first started reopening and sort of bringing people back to the cinema, if you will, they were doing it in I would say a pretty smart way. They were, bringing folks back in, and then they were using the ample room that they had in theaters by adding little blocks, so that way, for instance, if you chose 2 seats, no one could sit within 2 seats of you. So obviously the attendance was cut and reduced because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but you could go to the movie theater and in theory be safe because you were always social distancing due to the guides that they were creating. So a little small commentary on that, they actually stopped doing that. So if you're asking yourself, should I go to the movies? I would do so, but be cautious. Maybe go when it's not as busy, because I will be honest with you, we were going to go see the later set movie at 7, but we chose seats on the end of a row and somebody chose the seats right next to us, which of course made me very uncomfortable because I was like, I don't want to sit next to some homeboy who's probably going to be mouth breathing the entire movie, especially since the Delta variant is absolutely insane right now and it's hitting people really hard. So that being said, we decided to go to the 4:30 showing, which ended up being a lot better. There were a lot less people in there. Actually, I had 4 hours of time off of work that I had to take, so it was a good opportunity for us to go on a little date, go watch the movie, and go get some food. But I wanted to add that little small commentary because I feel like they had the right idea at first, going back to the movies. I should probably do a whole geek rant about this, but they had the right idea about going back to the movies, but they kind of swashed that away, I think, because, things started to kind of get a little bit better back in May or June or whatever. So things started to get a little bit better because people were starting to get vaccinated and people were, things were just getting better. But then, boom, the Delta variant, and I feel like we need to start imposing some more restrictions, but that's neither here nor there. I really don't want people in the comments coming after me because I want to impose on their freedoms or whatever. So anyhow, we're not going to talk about that. But what we are going to talk about is the Candyman movie. The Candyman 2021, written and directed by Nia DaCosta, also written, of course, by Jordan Peele. But of course, Nia DaCosta did an amazing job on this film. But today we're actually going to kind of do a little bit of a deep dive. I'm going to give you some brief plot, synopsis, and details that I wanted to share with you, of course. And then, of course, I want to go into the cast of the film. And as always, of course, I got to give my opinion. So then I'm going to give my official opinion at the end of this to sort of give you an idea of what's going on. I will give you a sort of a heads up. I'm going to try and keep this mostly spoiler-free, but keep in mind that sometimes stuff does come out, and I am not that great about catching myself when I know I'm about to say something that is probably going to be somewhat spoiler-esque. So if you've not seen the film and you definitely want no spoilers on the film, don't watch this episode. Period. Because if you do and I accidentally spoil something for you, I'm sorry, but I warned you. This is the 4-minute mark in the video. Stop watching right here. But anyhow, we're going to get into it. We're going to talk about the 2021 Candyman film. So you may notice that I actually don't have my normal ring light on, so you might see a little bit of a shadow, but I had my window here. The sun is really bright and it keeps changing, so it will get bright and then get dark. So I apologize if the lighting is not perfect on this one. I'm doing this one pretty early, but the sun is out and it's super bright right now, so it's like shining in on me. And with the light on, it just looks super fucky. So I apologize if the lighting is not up to par as it normally is. And if there's any shadow on this side of my face, I am not a demon, I promise. But anyhow, we're gonna get into this review. So first and foremost, I wanna talk a little bit about the movie itself. I wanna give you guys some details. So obviously you can read the plot synopsis on any number of websites, IMDb, or any review. There's a freaking gnat or fly in here, Jesus Christ. But then of course, the synopsis and details that I wanna provide you are sort of my take on what the movie's about. So we're gonna kind of go through this. So of course, this takes us back to Cabrini Green. If you've not watched any trailers or if anything like that, or if you've never watched the first one, I guess. The first film takes place as Helen Lyle, she's a researcher, is actually researching urban legends and like fairy tales and stuff like that. And she hears of a legend called the Candyman. The Candyman, of course, is the legend that is spawned from Cabrini Green. There's a lot of different rumors and thoughts about who the Candyman is, what he does, and how things work. But at the end of the day, a lot of people sort of allude to it being sort of supernatural. Now, of course, if you've never seen the other movie, go see it. I think I actually at some point made a video about the original Candyman. I'm not 100% sure, don't quote me on that. But, of course, the original Candyman, happening in the 90s, had its time, its synopsis, its DA. But today, we actually go back to Cabrini Green, which is a projects area from the first film and from different periods that are flashed back to in the film, where a lost artist has actually gone there for inspiration. So the lost artist is our main protagonist, Anthony McCoy, the character's name, of course, who is attempting to find inspiration for new art for a new gallery. He learns of the Candyman from one of probably my favorite actors in this movie. I'm just partial to this man because his voice is amazing, and this gentleman is just absolutely incredible in my opinion. But Coleman Domingo, who is William Burke, amazing supporting actor. William Burke gives our lead, who is Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, or Anthony McKay, he gives him the information about the Candyman, and in turn gives him the inspiration for his art. Now, the lost artist Anthony McCoy, in his search, receives the legend of the Candyman and unfortunately subjects a whole new generation to the Candyman's wrath. Now, there's actually a lot of great pretext in this film that talks about how Anthony McCoy connects back to the original film. I'm not going to spoil that for you. Watch the movie. It's an amazing connection that I thought that I had caught on my initial watching, but it was something that I didn't realize until later in the film. So watch it. You will be very surprised. So there's lots of connections to the original. First and foremost, there's a lot of emphasis that Helen Lyle is sort of in this realm of Candyman, right? So they kind of explain that Candyman isn't just one person. Obviously, in the original, they talk about Daniel Robitaille, who is played by Tony Todd, as the original Candyman. And they do cement that he is the original Candyman, that he is the original person who was subjected to some horrific not an accident, but horrific death, right? He was subjected to some horrific death, and he was invoked as the Candyman. But here's where it gets interesting. We learn that there are subsequent people who get cemented as part of the Candyman legacy. There are people such as our sort of main antagonist, if you will, Michael Hargrove, the actor who plays Sherman Fields. Sherman Fields, as you learn in the film, is in fact someone that they called the Candyman. Now, the reason they called him the Candyman is because he gave children candy. Now, he was completely innocent. Let's start with that first and foremost. I'm not really going to go into much other details other than he was an innocent person who met a horrible demise because of rumors. When he died, he was then cemented as the Candyman. He also had a hook for a hand, weirdly enough. So that was sort of, I guess, like a little splash of flavor. But he was, of course, another version of the Candyman who then went on to subject a generation to his wrath. Now, here's the interesting part. as I mentioned, they definitely cement Helen Lyle as part of this mythos. So sort of at the end of the first Candyman movie, Helen Lyle sort of comes back from the dead and exacts revenge on her husband, who was not faithful to her in the end. And so you have this very interesting, well, let me paraphrase by saying that he was most likely not faithful to her for more than that, of course, but specifically at the end, during the end of that movie. But Helen Lyle is cemented in this film as an important part of the Candyman lore, and as a driving force for how people think and view Cabrini Green. In addition to that, we of course have Tony Todd. We go back to Danny Robitaille, and they really explain the whole system of he was the first and then there were more to come. Now, I'm not going to lie to you, I don't really remember Candyman 2 and 3 that much. I think we're going to have to go back and watch them, and then hopefully by the time that I've gone back and watched those, I can go back and watch the new Candyman, because if I remember correctly, there are even ties to Candyman 2 and 3, or at least subtle inferences on those films. So that is something that I would also say, is that if you have watched all three films and you have a pretty good understanding and connection to all three films, then I think it would be a very good idea to watch them before watching this film, even if you have a really good understanding of those movies, because they do a lot of drops and backgrounds and everything else that definitely lead me to believe that there are connections to the other films. So keep that in mind if you go to watch this. I do also want to give a couple other inferences here for some other people in the film. We also have Teyonah Parris, who plays a Brianna Cartwright in the film. She is the main female protagonist, and I would personally call her a final girl. She is absolutely amazing, an incredible actress. All of these actors are amazing. Everybody in the film was amazing. There's a whole other lot of other people that I could mention, but I wanted to mention those four specifically because those four that I talked about so far, Coleman Domingo, Michael Hargrove, Teyonah Parris, and Yahya Abdul-Mateen, they of course are, in my opinion, the four main cast members who really drive this film all the way to the end. And I will also mention that there was a little cameo by our good friend Tony Todd, and at the end of this, I think he'll have a couple of words for us. But that being said, we're going to kind of move on to the actual my opinion / review of the film. I really wanted to give you some really solid details of what the film is about and some of the inspirations and details for what this film was about as well. So now it is time for me to talk to you about what I loved about this film and my official review of the 2021 Candyman film. I'm going to make this real short and sweet for you. The Candyman 2021 film is an easy 9 out of 10 for me. Here's the deal. The Candyman film had so many amazing connections to the original Candyman film, so many amazing and just mind-blowing realizations about the connections. Not only that, they gave us a lot of fan service. They gave us Tony Todd. They gave us so many connections. They gave us Helen Lyle. They gave us all the stuff that makes us love it so much more. And not only that, Nia DaCosta, I just, her take on the film altogether was just, I mean, seriously, chef's kiss. The thing that I feel like people are going to be upset about this film is that it does have a lot of political undertone and commentary, and of course, and I'm not saying this way it's going to sound because I don't want people bitching and moaning in my comments. I already made a comment about coronavirus and how theaters should be imposing restrictions at the beginning of this. So if you can't tell, I'm a very left-leaning individual, and I thought that this film did a very good job of talking about things like the Black Lives Matter movement and just generally gentrification and how that can affect people. And not only that, but it also touches on a lot of other takes and tones of segregation, racism, and just generally how our society as a whole have treated people of color. And I thought that it fit perfectly in this film because the original film was about that, truthfully. The original film does have a lot of those same undertones. It was the 90s, of course, so a lot of them were underplayed because in the 90s, you couldn't really do that. Obviously, Clive Barker, when he made his original Candyman, like the book, it was one of those things where I don't know if that was necessarily his intention, but when it was translated into film, it did carry that weight. This film, I mean, cranks it up to a 100, and I mean that in a good way. Because honestly, those undertones drive this film. At the end of the film, one of our supporting cast members, Coleman Domingo, who plays William Burke, who sort of acts as a secondary source and historian for the main protagonist. He gives sort of a rationale for what he does throughout the film, and even at the end of the movie, because he knows that Cabrini Green and the entirety of that community has to have a Candyman. He has this sort of weird rationalization that there has to be a demon because they need someone to be that demon, and it's the Candyman. So they have this whole build up and lead up of flashbacks to his childhood and everything else, where he meets the Candyman of this film, which is Michael Hargrove, Sherman Fields, and it has this whole conversation about who the Candyman is, what the Candyman represents, and why there needs to be a Candyman. And it's just, there's all kinds of things in this film that really lead us down that track. And in my opinion, it just deepens the love of the film for me. Because when a film can do something like that and can make a statement, but also be an amazing film and be an amazing horror film, and not even that, revitalize a franchise, I think that they can continue to do Candyman films after this, and it could be tasteful and actually well done. Now, I'm not sure if they will decide to do additional Candyman films, but if they did, I would 100% go and watch them, because they establish Candyman as more of a universe rather than just a supernatural entity that just does things for essentially no reason. There is reasoning behind the Candyman. There is rationale behind the Candyman. It's just a matter of when, how, and why that rationale is executed. In this case, they create a universe, in my opinion, that makes it understandable, that makes it knowing, and in my opinion, opens the doors to many more films in a franchise that I think could be done well. And I think that they could even go as far as bringing back older people who were in the other Candyman films to reprise roles, as well as project and continue to push along a narrative of the Candyman. So hopefully that will happen. I would love to eventually one day see a return of Tony Todd in more of an official and fuller capacity, but I think that there could be a potential issue because they did have to CGI a little bit since he is older now. They had to kind of de-age him a little bit for this film, so I'm sure that's part of the reason why they did not want to bring him back for that purpose, because it probably costs a lot of money to de-age people. But with that all being said, I do want to go ahead and close off and go into final thoughts. This film is a 9 out of 10 for me. It's amazing. It has everything that I want in a horror film. It tackles very hard topics, but it also does it while having gruesome kills that, in my opinion, outshine the original Candyman. It also does a lot of things right that the original Candyman either couldn't do or didn't want to do. A lot of things were executed so carefully and so tastefully. A lot of the kills were violent and gruesome, but they were artistic. There were areas of death in this film, and they were all very violent deaths. I mean, you can't deny that the Candyman has a flair for gore and violence, but it's done in a way that makes it look amazing. Everything about this film, from start to finish, had my attention, and I would highly recommend anyone out there go and watch it if you have not already. Alright, so that is going to be it for today, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed my review of the Candyman, as well as some of the preemptive information about the cast, crew, and story. Such a good movie. I would highly recommend anyone out there who has not seen it yet, go ahead and go watch it, because you're not going to be disappointed. Unless you don't like horror movies, in which place you might be a little disappointed, I guess. But if you like horror movies, if you like the original Candyman film, go watch it, period. You're not going to be upset by this movie. This film is going to definitely revitalize that love of the Candyman so many years later. And I think it's an important piece to note that this does have a lot, again, of political commentary and everything else that I think is very important, because it talks about really hard subjects in a way that makes it easier for people to understand, I feel like. Obviously, a lot of these subjects do have a lot of nuance to them. So I guess if you're not in the right state of mind to try and understand that, or if you have a refusal to understand things like that, maybe don't watch this film, because I don't want to see your opinion about it out there, because it's most likely misinformed. I'm just completely joking, kind of. Don't hate me in my comments, I guess. But anyhow, if you have seen this film, I would love to hear from you. Let me know in the comment section down below what anybody thought about it. I don't know if Salsa has watched it yet, but he and I do have oftentimes disagreeing opinions on horror films, because a lot of the time he likes horror films for completely other reasons. I like horror films because I love horror films. He's not much into like the political commentary thing. He thinks that it should be left out of films and just in general for all time. But at the same time, I don't know. It's also been a long time since he and I really debated about films, so I could be completely misinterpreting our other conversations. But maybe he's watched it and I can talk about it on the next Controversy podcast. So keep an eye for that. But I mean, trying to even think anything else for us to do today. So I will say this: if you guys have not yet checked out our other videos, check out this week's episode of Controversy. We actually did a kind of a step-by-step analysis of the recent pictures from the set of the Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City film. So if you've not yet seen those pictures or read the article, me and Salsa do sort of a deep dive into those pictures. We do a deep analysis of them on the podcast, and I did, of course, include the link to the article so you could follow along with us. Of course, next week, I think I'm probably going to be doing a Geek Rants for the first time in a while for Monday. I have sort of an inspiration during the beginning of this episode to do a Geek Rants. So that's sort of a connection you can see there. So Monday you'll get a Geek Rants from us, and then of course Wednesday Controversy, and then Friday back to our regular scheduled programming of the Conspiracy Theories with Like series. But for right now, I want you to guys go ahead and like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below. Tell me your opinions about the original film or this film, or tell me I'm stupid. I don't care. I'll just remove your comment. No, I'm kidding. I need it for the algorithm. But I hope you guys are enjoying your life. Hope you guys are having a wonderful week. Today is Friday. Happy Friday. And I think we're just going to close it there. So stay safe, stay awesome, stay healthy, and we will see you in the next one. See ya.